Xian was a 30-year-old virgin nerd who spent his whole life dreaming about magic. But sadly, he was stuck in the boring real world, where everyone treated him like a loser for believing magic could exist. But everything changes when he suddenly dies from a heart attack and gets reincarnated into a fantasy world with overpowered magical abilities. It all starts in a peaceful village surrounded by lush greenery, where a young girl named Marie is waiting patiently for her parents to return home from a trip. The moment she sees them approaching, she runs over with a big smile and happily welcomes them back. However, her parents didn't return alone. During their journey, they got a little busy and ended up having a baby boy. Marie's mother, Emma, introduces the newborn as her little brother, Xian. Marie is overjoyed to finally have a younger sibling and immediately takes a liking to him. 3 years later, Marie and Xian are playing a game of tag. Marie is much faster, so Xian struggles to keep up with her. While they are playing, their father, Gawain, returns home. Marie immediately runs over to greet him, and he warmly welcomes her. Xian soon joins them as well. Gawain tells Xian that he's looking dependable as always. However, Xian believes that compliments should go to Marie instead because she's the one he sees as dependable. For a moment, Marie feels proud to hear that. But when she thinks about it more carefully, she realizes that Xian is actually the responsible one. He always helps with chores around the house and has even stopped wetting his bed. Still, she can't help seeing him as a little childish, sometimes since she often catches him pretending to be a superhero. Later that evening during dinner, Xian gathers the courage to ask his father an important question. He asks whether monsters really exist. Gawain tells him that they do. In fact, that's exactly why children are forbidden from leaving the village on their own. Xian then asks another question. He wants to know whether magic exists in the world. Gawain thinks about it before answering. He says he's never heard of magic before, since he's considered one of the smartest people in the village. He believes that magic simply doesn't exist. Hearing that answer leaves Xian disappointed. After that day, he stops talking about magic altogether. 3 years pass since then, and Marie is now older and spends much of her time practicing swordsmanship. One day, Xian asks her why she trains so hard every day. Marie explains that she wants to become strong enough to protect their family if something dangerous ever happens. Hearing that makes Xian appreciate just how caring and reliable his big sister really is. As the sun begins to set, Marie is still practicing the same sword technique. Rose is nearby watching her train. She points out that Marie has been repeating the exact same move for the past 3 hours. Marie asks Rose if she'd like to spar with her, but Rose quickly refuses. She's exhausted after spending the entire day helping her grandfather in his workshop. Rose then asks where Xian is. When Marie explains that he's inside studying again, Rose comments that despite being siblings, they are complete opposites. Marie doesn't argue with that. In fact, she suspects Xian studies so much because he still hopes to prove that magic exists someday. Suddenly, something strange happens. The pond nearby begins glowing with a mysterious light. Both Marie and Rose stare in shock. The following day, Marie brings Xian to the pond. Xian is confused about why she brought him there in the first place. However, as they sit beside the water, the pond begins glowing once again. Xian is completely stunned. He's never read about anything like this, nor has he ever seen anything similar before. Marie explains that when she first discovered the glowing lights, she immediately brought their parents to see them. Strangely, neither of them could see anything. This causes Xian to wonder if only children can see the lights. Marie shakes her head and explains that some children their age can't see them either. She then asks Xian if these mysterious lights could be the magic he once talked about. Xian is surprised that she still remembers that conversation after all these years. Marie smiles and admits that seeing Xian excited makes her happy too. The next morning, the siblings finish breakfast as quickly as possible and head to the pond carrying several buckets. Marie asks why they brought the buckets since the glowing lights don't appear until evening. Xian explains that before they can understand the lights, they need to investigate the pond itself. He says they will fill 3 buckets with pond water. One bucket will contain sand from the bottom of the pond, another will contain pond plants, and the last one will contain fish. Marie has no idea how that will help, but she trusts Xian and decides to go along with his plan. After collecting the sand and plants, they use a fishing rod to catch a fish for the final bucket. It takes some time, but they eventually succeed. At that moment, Rose arrives and asks what they are doing. This is her first proper meeting with Xian, so he introduces himself. After the introductions are finished, Rose asks why they're spending so much time at the pond. Xian explains that they're conducting an experiment to learn more about the mysterious glowing lights. When Rose mentions that she can also see the lights, Xian immediately becomes interested. He asks whether she knows anything about them. Unfortunately, she doesn't. Rose says she simply enjoys watching them because they're beautiful. As evening arrives, the glowing balls of light begin rising from the pond once again. However, none of the buckets produce any lights. Xian had tried to recreate the pond's environment as closely as possible, but nothing happened. His first experiment is a failure. With no better ideas available, Xian decides to investigate the pond directly. He removes his pants and prepares to enter the water. Marie refuses to let her little brother go alone, so she removes her outer clothes as well and joins him. Together they wade into the pond, surrounded by countless floating lights. Xian tries looking beneath the water, but it's far too murky to see clearly. Even so, the investigation isn't completely useless. Based on what he observed, Xian concludes that the lights are probably connected to some living creature beneath the water, possibly a fish or something similar. He still doesn't know exactly what causes them, but he is happy to have made some progress. After leaving the pond and getting dressed again, Xian thanks Marie for helping him. Marie simply smiles and tells him not to worry because family members should always support each other. Just then, Rose calls out to them. She excitedly reveals that she has caught a female fish of the same species as the one they caught earlier. This surprises everyone because female fish of that species are apparently very rare. The three of them place the female fish into the bucket beside the male fish. Almost immediately, glowing balls of light begin appearing inside the bucket. At that moment, Xian finally understands the truth. The lights are produced as part of the courtship behavior between the male and female fish. Marie has no idea what courtship means, so Rose explains that it's how male and female animals attract each other before getting married. After hearing that explanation, Marie suddenly comes up with an unusual idea. Because she admires Xian so much, she declares that she wants to marry him someday. The next morning, Marie is feeling down because their mother scolded her for saying such a thing. Xian understands why their mother reacted that way. He gently explains that brothers and sisters can't get married, so the best thing they can do is remain close and support each other as family. Marie becomes emotional after hearing that and wraps him in a hug. As they embrace, something unexpected happens. Xian's body suddenly begins glowing, leaving them both in shock. Xian immediately starts thinking about what could have caused it. He realizes the glow resembles the mysterious lights from the pond. He theorizes that some kind of magical energy entered his body when he stepped into the water. At that moment, Xian reaches an exciting conclusion. Magic has existed in the world all along. It simply hadn't been discovered or properly understood yet. Filled with excitement, Xian begins looking forward to the incredible journey that awaits him and the mysteries he'll uncover in the future. The scene then shifts back to Xian's past life, where he is counting down the seconds until midnight. He is about to turn 30 years old and is waiting anxiously for the moment to arrive. As soon as it hits midnight, he celebrates his new age. He is happy because he has read several books that said anyone who remains a virgin until 30 would gain magical powers. Without wasting time, he immediately tries to cast magic spells. However, nothing happens. He tries again and again, but there is still no effect. Feeling depressed, he sits on the floor and hugs his knees. He realizes that staying a virgin all this time was for nothing. Putting that aside, he stands up and decides to go to bed so he can wake up early for his dead-end job. But before he can do that, he suddenly suffers a heart attack and is seconds away from dying. As his life fades, his memories flash before his eyes. He remembers how, as a kid, he always wanted to live in a world where magic exists. He also admits that he knew the story about gaining magic through virginity was far-fetched, but he still tried anyway. In the end, he realizes it was all pointless. Back in the present, Xian lies on his bed while thinking about the magical energy he saw earlier. He is still not sure whether magic really exists in this world, but he knows he needs to experiment to find out. He tries casting a spell again, but just like before, nothing happens. This makes him feel a bit sad. Later, Marie walks into his room to call him for dinner. Xian asks her to come in because he wants to try something. Marie sits on his bed. Xian suddenly confesses his love for her, and just as he expected, it activates his magical energy. Marie gets upset, realizing Xian is treating her like part part of an experiment. But Xian tells her that he really meant it when he said he loved her. Hearing this makes Marie blush. Xian begins to think more carefully and realizes something important. When he expresses strong emotions like love, he becomes more aware of them. When he focuses those emotions at the same time, he is able to produce the glowing magical energy. Both of them become excited as they confirm this discovery. Xian concludes that he has established the existence of magic in this world. He decides to call this glowing energy a magically charged state. 1 month after unlocking this state, Xian has learned a lot more about it. He discovers that there is a limit to how many times he can enter the magically charged state. Once he reaches that limit, he enters a weak and tired condition and loses motivation. However, he also learns that if he fully uses up his magical energy and waits for it to recharge, his overall capacity increases. Even with this knowledge, Xian is still frustrated that he cannot create the glowing fish like lights he saw in the pond. The fact that a fish could produce them makes him feel even worse. Then he gets another idea. He tries combining emotion with logic. He channels his energy into his fist, and it actually works. His fist glows with light. Excited, he tries to punch the wall, but he immediately injures himself. He realizes the light has no real physical force and is only energy, not destructive power. Still, he is happy that he managed to produce light at all. He names this technique magic gathering, since it will need a proper name eventually. Xian continues practicing magic gathering until later that afternoon, when Gawain calls him, Marie, and Rose together. He wants to give them a swordsmanship lesson. Marie has been training on her own for a while, but Gawain believes it is time to include Rose and Xian as well. Xian dislikes sword training and would rather focus on magic. He tries to avoid it, but Gawain insists. He explains that the world outside the village is full of monsters, so they need to learn how to defend themselves. Training begins, and Xian performs worse than Gawain expected. Rose shows some potential, so Gawain pays attention to her progress. Next, it is time for Marie's sparring test. The match begins, and Marie moves at incredible speed, trying to land a quick attack. She changes direction quickly and attempts another strike, but Gawain catches her and hits her on the head, ending the match. Gawain is impressed with how much Marie has improved and tells her to keep training seriously. Later, Xian is alone, still practicing magic gathering. He tries to extend it into a longer blast, but he runs out of energy before he can figure it out. At that moment, Gawain enters his room and tells him they are going to Istria. He asks if Xian wants to come along. Xian gets excited and agrees immediately. Istria is a town in the region where they live, so the whole family rides a carriage there. When they arrive, Xian and the others begin running errands. Xian quickly becomes bored and wants to explore, but Gawain tells him he is still too young. Xian accepts it for now, but decides that once he is older, he will return to Istria and explore it on his own. Later, they arrive at a weapon shop where they meet Grast, one of Gawain's old friends and a skilled blacksmith in the town. Gawain had asked him to forge a sword for Marie. Marie receives the sword and immediately loves it after inspecting it. On the way back home, Marie feels guilty that Xian did not receive anything, but Xian tells her not to worry since it is her birthday gift. Then Xian notices a strange shop nearby and asks Gawain about it. Gawain tells him it is a place he does not need to know about. Xian apologizes for being too curious, but he remembers the sign clearly. It said it was a fairy selling shop, and he found that quite intriguing. By the time they get back home, a group of hooded men arrives at their house to warn Gawain that goblins have suddenly appeared and are heading their way. Xian hears this and gets excited, thinking he might finally get useful information about magic from the goblins. However, he quickly notices the tense atmosphere, which makes him realize that goblins are not weak monsters in this world. Gawain soon receives more information that there are only 2 goblins, so the situation should be manageable. He leaves with his team to handle them, but before going, he pats Xian on the head and tells him to keep everyone safe. Xian, Marie, Rose, and the villagers move upstairs and build a barricade to protect themselves in case a goblin gets inside. They wait for a while, thinking everything will be fine, but suddenly, a goblin appears inside their compound and somehow makes its way upstairs. Everyone hears it coming up the stairs and tries to stay quiet so it won't notice them. However, the goblin bursts through the door anyway, scaring everyone. Emma tries to protect them, but she gets so frightened that she falls over. The goblin even seems to find this funny. Xian watches closely and realizes the goblin is confident because it knows how strong it is. Marie steps forward with her sword, ready to fight, but the goblin easily knocks it away. Marie is left frozen in fear. The goblin moves closer and tries to attack her. At the last second, Emma jumps in to protect her and gets slashed. Seeing this, Xian realizes they are all going to die if nothing changes. He immediately rushes forward and grabs the goblin's arm. While doing so, he notices that the goblin has the same kind of magical energy he does. This gives him an idea. He channels his gathered magic into the goblin's arm, burning it and causing damage. Then he focuses the magic on its head, holding it down long enough to defeat it. Everyone stares at him in shock because they always thought Xian was the weakest in the family. Rose walks up and thanks him for saving them. However, there is a bigger problem. Emma is still bleeding heavily. They lay her down on a bed, and Xian does not know what to do at first. He remembers something from his past life, a medical technique he once saw on TV. He realizes that stitching the wound is the best way to stop the bleeding. He asks Leah, a villager who knows sewing, to help stitch Emma's wound closed. Stitching wounds has not been discovered in this world yet, so Leah hesitates. She worries it will only cause more pain, but Xian reminds her that this is a life or death situation, and she agrees to do it. Leah follows his instructions, and in the end, Emma's life is saved, and she is safely put to rest in bed. Gawain returns shortly after, and everyone feels relieved. He and the others manage to defeat the goblins, but they also found signs that there were more than just two. They rush back immediately. Some of the men are injured, but there are no deaths, and peace returns to the village. Later, Gawain speaks with Xian and asks how he knew about stitching at such a young age. Xian does not want to reveal his past life, so he simply says he somehow knew it. Gawain then asks about the scorch marks on the goblin and whether it was magic. Xian is shocked to hear his father say the word magic again. Marie also speaks up and tells Gawain that Xian has been researching magic for a while. Hearing this, Gawain tells Xian to stop his research immediately. He explains that if people find out such a power exists, it could bring serious danger to him. However, Xian refuses. He says he will not stop, because even if it is dangerous, he will be miserable if he gives up on it. He even tells Gawain that he can disown him if it causes too much trouble. Gawain sees how determined he is and finally agrees to let him continue. However, he sets one condition. Xian must report all his findings to him. They move to the house garden so Xian can test something with his magic. Gawain lights some firewood and watches as Xian activates his ability and plunges his hand straight into the flames. The fire glows bright and turns blue before his hand catches fire entirely. Luckily, Gawain grabs a bucket of water and puts it out without hesitation. Marie stares at him like he just lost his mind. Xian explains that he wanted to see what happens when magic interacts with a strong natural energy source like heat, and the glowing blue flame was the result. Gawain admits that what he saw is more than enough to convince him his son was telling the truth. Xian then starts to get that creepy focused look on his face, and Gawain notices it. But Marie tells him not to worry since that's just how Xian gets whenever he figures something new out. The next morning, Xian is back in the garden, ready to push further. He asks Gawain to douse him the moment his hand ignites, then dips it into the fire. It catches, Gawain puts it out, and Xian studies the result. No change in temperature, no change in flame color. He decides the fire needs to be stronger, turns it up, and keeps trying, but nothing changes. He spends the rest of the session adjusting his magical output little by little until his body gives out. While he rests, Rose shows up and figures out immediately what he was doing. Xian confirms it and mentions that Gawain now actively helps with experiments and has somehow become more invested than Xian himself. He then thanks Rose for what she said after he killed the monster. She tells him there's nothing to thank her for. He asks where Marie is, and it turns out she's busy training alone with a focused, grim intensity. Rose tells Xian that simply waiting for Marie to come around isn't enough, and that he needs to actually be there for her. Later, the four of them sit together and Xian explains what he has learned. Higher heat amplifies the magical flame, and magical energy behaves like a flammable substance, though it still has no real practical use yet. Gawain points out that fire is already difficult to control. Xian says that if he can learn to keep glowing orbs away from his hand the way fish do, he should be able to manage it. Marie quietly says she can already do that, then lifts her hand and releases several orbs into the air. Xian is caught off guard seeing this. Apparently, Marie learned it by watching him. Rose can also do it, so Xian tries it himself and manages it after a bit of guidance from Marie. They head back outside and Xian picks up a small ignition tool. He focuses his magic onto the tiny spark it produces, and a massive fireball erupts and explodes in the air above them. Everyone is shocked. Xian starts to feel overwhelmed with joy because the magic he had been chasing for 30 years was finally real. He finds Marie shortly after sparring with Gawain, exhausted with bandaged hands. Gawain decides they've done enough and calls it a day, but Marie refuses to stop, reminding him he once said training makes you stronger. He tells her even training has a limit and she has already hit it. Xian agrees and suggests she take some time to rest, but she just ignores both of them, gives Xian a cold look, and walks off without a word. Later, Xian tells Gawain he wants to find a source of electricity in this world, describing it as something similar to lightning. Gawain remembers Grast mentioning a weaker form of lightning somewhere and suggests they go into the city of Istria to find out. Xian goes to invite Marie, but she unexpectedly says she doesn't want to come. She simply walks Xian out of her room and goes back inside, staring at the bandages on her hands. Xian and Gawain arrive at Grast's shop, and he tells them they are probably thinking of lightning ore, but warns that it is dangerous and hard to transport, so merchants usually leave it where they find it. Xian is thinking about materials that can insulate electricity, so he asks about glass next, describing it as transparent and crystal-like. The blacksmith recognizes it, calls it paper crystal, and pulls out a piece he kept because of how it looked. Xian asks to touch it and is immediately struck by it. He's certain this is what he has been looking for, so he says he needs a larger piece, and Gawain says they will buy it without asking the price. Back home, Xian tests his magic near the lightning metal and a sharp, powerful spark bursts out. Gawain thinks it failed and tries to encourage him. Xian laughs and says it was a success. Magic does not just react to its environment, it mimics whatever phenomenon it touches. Heat made it behave like fire. Metal made it behave like electricity. He spends time alone afterward working out how to shape an electric current he can actually release. He realizes he has been too rigid, too focused on copying what the fish did. He adjusts his approach and it works almost immediately. He goes to tell Marie, but her room is empty. He sees the bandages she left on the bed and heads out to find her at the lake, training alone in the dark. She asks why he came, then she tells him everything. She always wondered why he never seemed to notice her or help her the way she helped him. She felt jealous. As his older sister, she believed protecting him was her job, and she trained hard because of that. But when the monster came, she was completely helpless and would have died without him. She couldn't accept being the one who needed saving. Xian asks quietly if she hates him. She says she never could and that she will love him no matter what, but she cannot forgive herself, and the jealousy is still there because she sees herself as weak. Training is the only thing making her feel like she is moving forward. Xian kneels down and hugs her, then tells her he didn't understand what she was going through and that he wasn't paying attention the way he should have been. Then he apologizes and promises to always support her. With the tension between the siblings behind them, Xian threw himself back into his work. He had a new experiment brewing and wasted no time getting started. His first discovery was that he could push his magical energy outward into a broad, thin layer. The downside was that in that spread out state, it couldn't interact with natural phenomena the way his earlier experiments had. With that in mind, he decided to go the other direction. Rather than expanding his energy, he squeezed it down into a tight, concentrated mass. The moment he struck it with the fire striker, his fire spell hit harder than it ever had before. Riding that momentum, he aimed a shot of condensed energy at the lightning ore nearby. The ore sparked, but only barely. The amount of energy he used was too low to get a real reaction. Still, that small result gave him enough of a hint on where to look next. He worked out how to not only release condensed magical energy, but also give it a specific shape as it left his body. He tested this by forming a steady stream of energy that flowed continuously from him toward the lightning ore. The ore responded with a violent surge of lightning that came crackling straight at him. He pulled back from the experiment with a quiet kind of satisfaction, because he was getting really close to figuring it out. What interrupted him was Grast, who arrived with trouble written all over his face. The blacksmith had gotten his hands on some of the lightning ore using knowledge passed down from Xian, with the idea of turning a profit from it. He came in apologizing, knowing he had acted without Xian's approval. Xian Xian brushed it off because he didn't really see a problem with it. But the real issue became clear the moment they stepped into the shop. Grast had tried selling the ore as a light source, but it was unpredictable and too risky for most buyers, so the sales had gone nowhere. Now he was stuck with a pile of unsold ore that hissed and crackled with static all day. The neighbors had been complaining, and the landlord had finally had enough. He had been given just 3 days to fix it, or he would be out on the street. He looked at Xian and begged him to find a solution. Xian decided to take the request seriously. The answer came to him when he saw what happened when 2 pieces of ore were placed close together. They drew an electric arc between them, and the light from that arc was sharp and intense. He got an idea and told Grast to smelt the ore down. Grast did, and the lightning properties vanished entirely the moment heat touched it. Xian turned that result over in his head and quickly found the reason. The heat was stripping something out of the ore, so he stepped up to the forge and summoned a magical flame that ignited it with a blue fire. Grast stood frozen in shock, so Gawain gave Xian the signal to continue, and Xian explained the concept of magic to him in simple terms. He accepted it without much argument after seeing it with his own eyes. Under Xian's direction, Grast ran the lightning ore through the forge again using the magical fire. What came out was an ingot that behaved completely differently from before. The erratic discharging was gone. It was stable, safe to hold and work with, and yet the lightning properties were still there. Xian decided to call it Iron Lightning. He designed 2 products from it. The lightning lamp came first, a contained device with 2 small iron lightning plates that produced a bright electric arc whenever the insulator between them was removed. The second was the lightning striker, built to create a controlled spark capable of igniting wood. When it was done, Grast was visibly moved. He looked at Xian and spoke honestly, putting the boy's greatness into words without hesitation. The emotion of the moment got the better of him, and he almost let slip something about Xian's true origins before Gawain cut him off. After that, the family headed home, and Grast made a quiet promise to properly repay Xian for everything. On the carriage ride back, Xian's mind was already elsewhere. An idea had formed during the work, and he was certain it would push his understanding of magic further than anything he had done before. Time moved on, and Xian kept at his research. He reached another firm conclusion during this period. Magical energy behaved similarly to air in how it functioned, and when it came into contact with physical matter, it drew out and amplified that matter's natural properties. He also gave a name to something he had been observing for a while. When different types of magic or energy were layered together, he called it compound magic. Grast eventually delivered the special gauntlets Xian had ordered, built to spec. They were lined with paper crystal chosen for how well it blocked and contained energy, and the outer layer was tough leather treated to resist both flame and wear. Xian pulled them on and released his power. Fire and lightning poured out of him with a force and precision that left everyone in the room frozen. He stood there afterward with tears running down his face. After everything, after all the years of reaching for it, he was finally using magic exactly the way he had always imagined it. The next morning, Xian trained in the garden alongside Rose and Marie. When they finished, he thanked them both for coming. Marie told him not to make a big deal out of it, saying looking out for him was just what older sisters did. Hearing that brought up a memory. Last night, he had overheard Gawain saying that Xian was adopted, meaning he and Marie were not related by blood. He hadn't thought much of it at the time, but now that he sat with it, the weight of it felt different. After that, they went to the lake, where Xian wanted to try something with water magic. He stepped into the lake and attempted to push his magic outward, but nothing happened. Marie and Rose watched and asked what he was trying to do, so he explained it to them. In an earlier experiment, he had discovered that magical energy released into open air absorbed the properties of air itself. His idea was that the same rule might apply underwater. He adjusted his approach and tried again. This time, the water reacted, confirming that water magic really did exist. After that, he told Marie and Rose to pay attention and tried something new. He attempted to pull water directly out of the air using magic, but it didn't work. He thought about it and concluded that his output was too low, so he increased it and tried again. A small sphere of water water formed in his palm. Marie instantly rushed forward, grabbed him, and demanded to know where the water came from. After Xian explained his reasoning step by step, both she and Rose tried it themselves and managed to succeed as well. A few days later, the group went into town with Grast, who led them toward the monster-slaying guild. On the way, he explained that joining meant registering officially, then asked if they were really ready for it. Marie said that if she backed out now, she would never get that confidence back. Xian, however, was more concerned about Gawain finding out, so he asked Grast to keep it a secret. Inside the guild, Grast stepped up to the reception desk and introduced himself as a platinum rank fighter, registering the 3 children. Before anything could continue, Gawain appeared behind them and introduced himself as a diamond rank fighter who would be accompanying them as support. The room went silent. People began whispering in disbelief, since reaching diamond rank was nearly unheard of. Outside the guild, the children apologized, but Gawain told them he had expected it. When they asked how, he explained that Marie's behavior had been off for days, which made it easy to figure out. He made his position clear. What they did was dangerous and unacceptable without telling him. From now on, they were to inform him of everything. That said, he also told them that having someone of his rank with them meant they would be safe, and he would be there when they faced monsters. After that, they moved to the area where monsters had been spotted. Gawain went in first and quickly took them down without showing any strain. He told them he had only reduced their numbers. The rest would be left for the 3 of them when the monsters returned. These creatures were weaker than goblins, so he considered it a reasonable starting point. Marie and Rose would hold the front line, while Xian would stay behind them. The monsters arrived shortly after. Xian opened with fire magic, pouring magical energy into his gauntlet to increase the output. The explosion that followed was massive, wiping out a large portion of them instantly. While the dust was still settling, his energy dropped sharply and one of the remaining monsters charged at him. It leapt toward him, but Marie arrived just in time to stop it. Together, the 3 of them finished the rest, clearing the remaining monsters one by one. Xian thanked Marie for stepping in. She brushed it off and repeated what she had said before. Protecting him was her job, and besides, she felt a little more confident than she had that morning. Gawain acknowledged their effort, but told them to keep moving. There was still more ground to cover, and they needed the experience. By the end of the second battle, all 3 were exhausted. Gawain told them to stay put while he and Grast handled the loot. They rested beneath a nearby tree. Xian noticed a large tent not far away and wanted to check it out. Marie told him to leave it alone, saying they had no reason to go there. He ignored her and went anyway. Inside, something was glowing inside a cage. He moved closer and found a fairy trapped inside. Marie entered behind him and quietly asked if she was different from the monsters they had been fighting. Xian reached toward the cage, and the fairy recoiled from him. Without much discussion, they made their decision. He opened the cage, and the fairy immediately flew out. Seeing her escape, Xian and the girls hoped she would make it home safely. After that, they headed back home. Their mother looked at them and immediately went pale. Gawain shifted uncomfortably under her gaze, and she dealt with him first by giving him the belt. After that, she returned to the dining room and spoke with the children. Marie and Xian explained everything. She listened quietly, then revealed she already knew about the monster hunting because Gawain had told her himself. Xian asked why she had punished him then. She explained that it didn't matter how prepared they were or who was with them. Her children coming home injured was not something she would accept lightly, and Gawain had pushed too hard for a first outing. Then she made her stance clear. As long as they were not hurting anyone, she would not stop them. All she asked was that they take care of themselves. Marie and Xian apologized, and that ended the discussion. 2 years after that, Xian, Marie, and Rose are once again fighting monsters. During a goblin hunt, Xian uses a storm magic spell he recently created. The spell traps a goblin in powerful winds and throws it away with ease. Although the spell takes a long time to cast, it is highly effective for controlling enemies. After the battle, Marie gets excited and points out that Xian defeated 20 goblins on his own. Xian reflects on how much they have grown since they began combat training 2 years earlier. While walking through the city market, Xian notices that many new fighters are joining the guild. Rose explains that goblin attacks have become more common and are happening closer to the city. During the past 2 years, Xian has also learned to sense how much magical energy a person has, and he considers Marie and Rose to be among the strongest humans he has ever met. The group later visits Grast, who reveals that he has finished making a new pair of gloves for Xian. Grast comments on how quickly Xian wears out his equipment and says it is proof of how much stronger he has become. When Marie proudly mentions that she and Xian are close to reaching silver rank, Grast is shocked, saying fighters their age rarely advance that quickly. Back at home, the siblings continue training with their father. Xian manages to defeat him thanks to his magic, but Marie loses once again, frustrated. She complains that she can never catch up to Xian. Their father reassures her, explaining that she is already exceptionally talented and may even surpass Xian one day. Although his words are encouraging, Marie remains determined to improve. Sometime later, Xian and Marie help Rose on her farm because she is short on workers. Their task is to remove pests that are damaging the crops. While Xian works efficiently, Marie struggles and ends up collecting far fewer pests than everyone else. Embarrassed but competitive, she declares that next year she will do better and beat them all. Suddenly, dark clouds cover the sky, even though the weather was clear only moments before. Strange lights appear overhead, and rain begins to fall. Rose quickly tells everyone to head inside, but before they can react, Marie suddenly collapses. Xian and Rose rush her into the house. Soon afterward, their parents arrive. Although Marie opens her eyes, she does not respond to anyone around her. She remains conscious but cannot move or speak. Rose fears that Marie may have contracted lethargy disease, a mysterious illness that has recently been spreading through the city. According to rumors, victims suddenly collapse and become trapped in a motionless state while still fully aware of their surroundings. No one knows what causes the disease, and almost nobody has ever recovered from it. Horrified, their parents decide to take Marie to a doctor in the city immediately. Their father initially tells Xian to stay behind, but Xian refuses. He argues that his father will need help protecting Marie during the journey. After some hesitation, his father agrees, and the two set off through the rain with Marie in a carriage. Along the way, Xian notices a strange red light in the sky. When he asks his father about it, his father says he cannot see anything. Before Xian can think further, a pack of wolves attacks the carriage. Xian tells his father to keep moving while he handles the monsters. Because of the rain, he cannot safely use fire or lightning magic, so he relies on water magic instead. Gathering rainwater, he forms it into sharp projectiles and launches them at the wolves. After a while, the pack suddenly retreats without warning. Confused, Xian soon discovers the reason when a giant wraith appears before him. Terrified, he tries to alert his father, but his father insists he cannot see anything. Xian realizes the creature is invisible to normal people and can only be seen by those with magical energy. He attacks the wraith with water magic, but the projectiles pass harmlessly through its body. As it approaches, Xian remembers how he defeated the goblin that attacked his home years earlier. Concentrating his magical energy, he releases it directly against the wraith. To his surprise, the attack works. The wraith recoils as though the energy is purifying it. The creature then moves toward the carriage, but the moment it comes near the lightning lamp attached to it, it reacts violently and pulls away. At that instant, Xian's father is finally able to see the wraith as well. Realizing he has found its weakness, Xian attacks again with his magical energy and destroys the monster. Afterward, his father admits that the creature was unlike anything he has ever encountered. Xian begins to suspect that the lightning lamp somehow allowed ordinary people to perceive the wraith, though he does not fully understand why. The two continue their journey and eventually arrive at the doctor's clinic. They are shocked to find the building overflowing with patients suffering from the same illness. Families crowd the halls, all searching for answers that no one seems able to provide. After waiting for a long time, Marie is finally examined. The doctor confirms their fears. She has contracted lethargy disease. When Xian asks if there is a cure, the doctor sadly explains that none exists. The cause of the disease remains unknown, and no effective treatment has been discovered. All they can do is monitor her condition and hope for a miracle. Hearing this, Xian remembers everything he and Marie have been through in this new world. Unable to accept the answer, he desperately begs the doctor to find some way to save her. Instead of returning to the village, the family decided to stay in Istria for a while. Grast offered them a room, and although Xian's parents formally thanked him, he brushed it off. To him, they were practically family, so helping them felt natural. For 4 days, Xian barely left Marie's side. Despite waiting and hoping, her condition showed no signs of improvement. During that time, his father shared new information. On the same day they encountered the Wraith, several other people had been attacked by similar invisible creatures. In every case, the victims could not see what had attacked them. His father suspected a demon was behind these incidents. If that was true, then Xian might have one of the few abilities capable of fighting back against the mysterious monsters. Xian made it clear that he was not interested in chasing monsters. His only concern was Marie. However, his father reminded him that other people were suffering as well. If they had the power to help, they could not simply ignore it. Those words reminded Xian of something Marie once told him. She had always said that his magic could be used to help many people. Knowing she would want him to act, he finally agreed. As he looked at Marie, he thought he saw her smile for a brief moment. At the same time, he noticed something strange. He could no longer sense any magical energy coming from her. Curious, he rushed outside and checked the people around him. To his surprise, he could not sense magical energy from anyone in the crowd. He immediately went to the clinic and examined the patients suffering from lethargy disease. The result was the same. Every victim had completely lost their magical energy. From this, Xian reached an important conclusion. The disease seemed to affect people who had the potential to use magic. Once infected, that magical energy disappeared entirely. His father took him to report this discovery to the Duke. Although the Duke looked intimidating at first, he turned out to be surprisingly relaxed. After hearing their report, he revealed that enough lightning lamps had been gathered to equip the city guards. Once he learned about Xian's findings, the Duke became convinced that the wraiths and the lethargy disease were connected through magical energy. Since the doctors had made little progress in finding a cure, he decided to support Xian's research. The Duke already knew about Xian's magical abilities and granted him permission to conduct experiments on monsters. He also assigned a small team to assist him. The group met for the first time later that day. The first member was Cole, an assistant to Dr. Alphonse. Cole clearly disliked the assignment and complained that working under a noble child was a waste of his time. Before he could continue, Rafina scolded him for being rude. She then introduced herself as a senior officer of the Royal Guard. She was cheerful and energetic, though the oversized armor she wore looked far too heavy for her. The final member was Bridget, a quiet girl who specialized in monster research. Unlike the others, she said very little and mostly kept to herself. To get everyone on the same page, Xian demonstrated his magic, and that display was enough to get their attention. So he went on to explain his theory. According to Xian, the lethargy disease might be caused by the loss of magical energy in people who possess magical potential. If that was true, then restoring magical energy could potentially cure the illness. Their goal would be to find a safe way to transfer magical energy into patients. Monsters would serve as their test subjects. So far, every time Xian directly injected magical energy into a creature, the results had been harmful. Before trying anything on humans, they needed to understand exactly what was happening. While Cole returned to the clinic to help with patients, Xian, Rafina, and Bridget headed out to search for monsters. The journey quickly revealed a problem. Rafina kept falling behind because her armor was so heavy. Eventually, she became frustrated and struggled to keep pace with the others. Not long afterward, the group encountered a goblin warrior. The moment she saw it, Rafina abandoned caution and charged forward, moving much faster without worrying about defense. She rushed the goblin and attacked. With some support from Xian, she quickly defeated the monster. As the goblin's body hit the ground, Xian and Bridget stared at Rafina in disbelief. They started to think Rafina had completely lost the plot because their goal was to capture goblins alive for experiments, not kill them. Back in the city, Rose came from the village to visit Marie. She felt guilty that she could do so little to help, but Xian assured her that simply being there meant a lot to both Marie and the family. Later, Cole brought Xian to the clinic because a new patient had arrived with a mild case of lethargy disease. When Xian examined him, he detected a tiny trace of magical energies still remaining in the man's body. This discovery strengthened his theory that the illness was connected to the loss of magical energy. Xian carefully transferred some magical energy into the patient and noticed a reaction. However, he could not tell whether it was helping or harming him. Afterward, he mentioned that they had learned a great deal from the case, but Cole quickly pulled him aside and warned him not to discuss their research publicly. He explained that many doctors would not appreciate outsiders making progress before them. Xian understood and jokingly pointed out that Cole was kinder than he pretended to be. That night, Xian tried using magical energy on Marie, hoping for some kind of response. Unfortunately, nothing happened. The next day, Xian, Rafina, and Bridget resumed their monster experiments. Bridget recorded the results while Xian tested magical energy on captured monsters. They discovered that weaker monsters such as goblins could only withstand a short transfer before suffering harmful effects, while stronger monsters lasted much longer. This suggested that a subject's strength affected how much magical energy it could handle. Xian began to suspect that the purification effect he observed in monsters might not happen in humans at all. To confirm this, he would need a human test subject. Later, while experimenting on fish at home, Rose found him testing whether magical energy affected ordinary animals. Even after receiving large amounts of energy, the fish remained perfectly healthy. From this, Xian concluded that the harmful purification effect seemed limited to monsters and spirits. Realizing what he needed to do next, Rose volunteered to help with a human experiment. Although grateful, Xian was nervous. He carefully transferred magical energy into her and told her to immediately report any discomfort. Rose only described a warm and pleasant feeling. Even after continuing far longer than he had with monsters, she showed no negative effects. As a result, Xian concluded that transferring magical energy into a person who already possessed their own magical energy was safe, at least in the short term. A month passed after the first wraith attack. Since no further attacks had occurred, the guards removed the lightning lamps from around the city. Bridget warned that the city would be vulnerable if another wraith appeared, but many people had already begun doubting that the lamps were responsible for stopping the attacks. Cole was among the skeptics. Rafina immediately defended Xian's research and pointed out how many useful discoveries he had already made. Faced with the evidence, Cole reluctantly admitted that she had a point. The conversation later shifted to the wraiths themselves. Bridget reported that no similar monsters had appeared anywhere else. Xian wondered why the attacks seemed limited to their region. Bridget then mentioned an ancient event known as the Elri Wars, which took place 1,000 years ago. The details had long been lost to history. Some believed Elri was the name of a powerful ruler, while others thought it referred to a vanished nation. Whatever the truth was, stories about strange creatures often appeared alongside tales of the conflict. The name caught Xian's attention, and he made a mental note to remember it. 2 years passed, and during that time, Xian continued his research into magical energy and the lethargy disease. He eventually discovered that excessive magical energy could actually trigger symptoms similar to the illness. He also learned that when a person received magical energy from someone else, their own energy was temporarily pushed aside. Despite these discoveries, none of them brought him any closer to a cure. The Duke continued supporting the project and hoped that Xian's talent would eventually produce results. Secretly, the Duke seemed concerned about the connection between the wraiths and the mysterious history surrounding the city, though he rarely spoke about it openly. One day, Xian visited the clinic and received a small piece of encouraging news. The patient with the mild case of lethargy had briefly smiled. It was only a tiny improvement, but it was more progress than most patients had shown in years. The man's wife tearfully thanked Xian for all the effort he had put into his research. Afterward, Cole pulled him aside and suggested that he take a break. Years of non-stop work had left him exhausted, and it was beginning to show. That evening, Xian shared dinner with his family and friends. Although everyone tried to enjoy themselves, there was a quiet sadness hanging over the gathering because Marie remained unchanged. His parents thanked Xian for everything he had done and told him how proud they were of his efforts. Xian assured them that he was fine, no matter how long it took. He intended to keep searching for a cure. Later that night, he sat beside Marie's bed as usual, but then he noticed something alarming. The sky outside had turned red again. Recognizing the strange phenomenon, Xian immediately understood that something was wrong. He had begun calling the crimson glow the night menace, but he still had no idea what caused it. Leaving Rose to watch over Marie and his mother, Xian grabbed a lightning lamp and rushed off to inform the Duke. But what he did not know was that a massive horde of wraiths was already moving toward the city. After 2 years without any major incidents, the mysterious red sky known as the Night Menace appeared once again. As two soldiers unknowingly walked toward a wraith in the streets, Xian rushed in and destroyed the creature with a magic-infused punch. Realizing the threat had returned, he immediately went to warn the Duke. The Duke took the warning seriously and ordered the city's forces to mobilize. He also instructed the guards to equip themselves with lightning lamps, which had previously proven effective against the wraiths. lamps. However, Xian doubted that the lamps alone would be enough to stop a large-scale attack. He requested permission to fight on the front lines, hoping they could develop a better solution after the battle was over. The Duke agreed and sent him to assist the city's defense force. Unfortunately, the commander in charge did not believe the danger was real. He viewed the emergency deployment as unnecessary and dismissed Xian's concerns. Before the argument could continue, Rafina arrived and fiercely defended Xian's warning. During the exchange, it became clear that Rafina had recently become captain of her own unit after nearly all of its members had resigned, leaving only 2 loyal knights under her command. The group soon gathered at the city's main gate. When the first wave of wraiths arrived, Xian immediately attacked. Using his magic, he burned through the approaching spirits before they could reach the walls. As the flames struck them, the guards finally caught sight of the creatures. Xian realized that light sources seemed to make the normally invisible monsters visible to ordinary people. The next wave was wiped out with powerful lightning magic. By the time Rafina and her knights arrived, the immediate threat had already been eliminated. Wanting a better view of the battlefield, Xian climbed onto the city wall and looked beyond the forest. What he saw made his blood run cold. An enormous army of wraiths was advancing toward the city. Knowing they needed every advantage possible, Xian used his magic to turn the flames around the gate into blue spiritual fire. The enhanced flames slowed the wraiths and made them easier to detect. Rafina and her men lit their torches using the blue fire and joined the battle. The wraiths launched a full assault. Xian continuously unleashed spell after spell, destroying spirits as fast as they appeared. Meanwhile, Rafina fought on the front lines. When her torch was extinguished, one of her knights coated a sword in oil and ignited it with the blue flames. Armed with the burning blade, she cut through the wraiths with renewed confidence. Her men soon followed her example, and before long, the defenders were successfully fighting back. Throughout the battle, Xian noticed something strange. Despite using large amounts of magic, he felt no exhaustion. In fact, his magical power seemed stronger than ever. This led him to wonder whether the Night Menace was somehow increasing magical energy. If that was true, it might also explain the lethargy disease and its connection to magic. Before he could think further, several wraiths began knocking over the fire stands around the battlefield in an attempt to extinguish the blue flames. Realizing how dangerous that would be, Xian unleashed a massive fire spell that wiped out every wraith in front of the city. For a brief moment, it seemed as though the battle was over. Then even more wraiths emerged from the forest. Although exhausted, Xian prepared himself to keep fighting. Just as the defenders seemed on the verge of being overwhelmed, reinforcements arrived. Grast appeared at the head of a large force of adventurers. The blacksmith praised Xian for holding the line for so long before joining the battle himself. Under Bridget's guidance, the adventurers used a new strategy. Archers lit their arrows with the blue flames and fired them into the approaching hordes, while melee fighters dealt with any spirits that managed to get close. The plan actually worked because, after a long and brutal battle, the combined forces of the city and the adventurers finally destroyed the Wraith army. Cheers erupted across the battlefield. Though the celebration did not last long, the commander of the defense force suddenly arrived with his soldiers and accused the adventurers of plotting against the city. He claimed they had used the Wraith attack as a cover to gather armed forces and prepare a rebellion. Even his own men looked confused by the accusation. When he ordered them to arrest the very people who had just saved the city, few knew how to react. But just then, everything changed. Without warning, the commander was lifted into the air by an unseen force. In an instant, the commander's neck was snapped. A tall figure surrounded by magical energy appeared before the stunned crowd. The attacker revealed himself as Ainsweel, a noble demon. Ainsweel looked relieved because, after being imprisoned for an unknown length of time, he was finally free once again. The moment Ainsweel appeared, Xian knew something was terribly wrong. The demon's magical energy was overwhelming, and the madness in his eyes made him far more frightening than any monster they had faced before. As Ainsweel introduced himself, he noticed the confusion on the faces around him. It quickly became clear that most humans no longer remembered the demons of old. Laughing mockingly. He called humanity foolish for allowing future generations to forget such a dangerous enemy. However, he had no interest in teaching history lessons. He only came to kill. The soldiers and adventurers immediately prepared for battle, but Xian noticed Ainswheel raising a hand. He instantly shouted for everyone to run. Ainswheel snapped his fingers, unleashing a massive explosion that destroyed part of the city's entrance. The shockwaves sent everyone flying. Bridget had always been curious about demons, but seeing one in person was nothing like she imagined. The sheer destruction erased any excitement she felt. At that moment, Xian understood the truth. The Wraith invasion had only been a warning. Ainswheel was the real threat. When he compared their magical energy, the difference was terrifying. The demon possessed hundreds of times more power than he did. Knowing they could not win a direct battle, Xian ordered Rafina and Bridget to focus on evacuating civilians, while he and Grass tried to hold the demon back. His plan was simple. Since he could sense magical energy, he would distract Ainswheel and create an opening for Grass to attack from behind. Grass hated the idea of using Xian as bait, but there was no better option. As Xian stepped forward, Ainswheel immediately took interest in him. The demon sensed his magical energy, but what truly caught his attention was Xian's red hair and red eyes. According to Ainswheel, those traits marked him as a descendant of Legra. The revelation only made the demon more eager to kill him. Despite the fear he felt, Xian refused to back down. He dodged attack after attack, barely staying alive against an opponent far beyond his level. Growing impatient, Ainswheel prepared a massive fire spell powerful enough to wipe out everything in front of him. Seeing that, Xian honestly had no idea how he could survive. Meanwhile, the city's clinic was filling with wounded civilians. After hearing reports from survivors, Cole realized that the city was under attack by a powerful magic user rather than ordinary monsters. Back on the battlefield, Rafina entrusted the evacuation to her knights and rushed back to help. As Ainswheel's spell neared completion, Xian acted quickly. Using magic, he shattered the ground beneath the demon's feet, disrupting his aim. The attack forced Ainswheel to fire his spell into the city wall instead of directly at them. Seizing the opportunity, Xian launched a combined water and lightning attack, but it accomplished nothing. Ainswheel effortlessly neutralized the spell. Ainswheel seemed more amused than threatened. He explained that what Xian called magic was actually sorcery and praised him for figuring out parts of it on his own. However, he also made it clear that Xian was still a beginner. To demonstrate the difference between them, Ainswheel summoned elemental power without using any tools or catalysts. According to him, true mastery came from understanding the laws of nature itself. His lesson was interrupted when Grass attacked from behind, but that ambush failed miserably. A magical barrier surrounding Ainswheel blocked the strike and blasted Grass away. Soon after, Gawain joined the battle, but his sword attack was equally ineffective. He too was thrown aside. Rather than becoming angry, Ainswheel seemed impressed by Xian's determination. Instead of killing him immediately, he decided he would rather make him a servant. As the demon drew closer, Xian noticed his fangs and finally realized what he truly was, a vampire. Before he could react, Ainswheel bit into his neck and began drinking his blood. Then something unexpected happened. The demon suddenly recoiled and threw Xian away. Ainswheel staggered backward, coughing violently. To everyone's shock, he revealed that Xian possessed a fairy blessing. Whatever power remained from the fairy they had freed years ago had contaminated his blood, making it unbearable for the vampire. The discovery sent Ainswheel into a frenzy. Desperate to eliminate Xian before he became a greater threat, the demon launched attack after attack. Though badly injured, Xian somehow survived long enough for help to arrive. Rafina reached his side and helped him hold his gauntlet up as he began gathering magical energy. At the same time, Ainswheel prepared an even larger fire spell, intending to finish everything with a single attack. But Xian needed more time. That opportunity came when Grass and Gawain launched a coordinated strike. Working together, they managed to sever one of the demon's arms. The injury finally created the opening Xian needed. With every bit of magical energy he could gather, he released a single concentrated attack. The blast collided with Ainswheel's spell. A massive explosion then erupted across the battlefield. When the light faded, the demon had been completely incinerated. The battle was over, and realizing they had won, Xian finally allowed himself to relax. The exhaustion he had been ignoring crashed down on him all at once, and he collapsed to the ground. After defeating Ainswheel, Xian remained unconscious for an entire week before finally waking up. Cole examined him and found nothing physically wrong. His parents and and Grast were relieved to see him awake, but Xian's first concern was whether everyone else had survived the battle. Thankfully, he learned that his friends were safe. However, the city had suffered heavily. Ainswheel's attack had destroyed large sections of the town, and many residents had lost their lives. Xian blamed himself for the tragedy, but Cole quickly shut down that thought. He reminded him that without his actions, the entire city would have been wiped out. As they talked, Xian noticed that his room seemed unusually bright. At first, he thought it was daytime, but it was actually the middle of the night. The light was coming from him. His magical energy had increased so dramatically after the battle that it was glowing visibly around his body. Although his power had grown hundreds of times over, Xian believed it still fell short of the strength Ainswheel possessed. After learning to control the excess energy, he immediately asked to be taken to Marie. For years, he'd suspected that a massive amount of magical energy might be able to cure the lethargy disease. Now he finally had enough power to test that theory. Standing beside his sister's bed, he transferred nearly all of his magical energy into her. Slowly, Marie opened her eyes. After 2 years trapped by the disease, she was finally awake. The room erupted with emotion as their family realized she'd been cured. For the first time in years, there was hope. Encouraged by the success, Xian began treating other patients as well. One by one, the victims of the lethargy disease recovered. Eventually, Dr. Alphonse's clinic was completely empty. With the crisis finally resolved, Xian turned his attention to a question that had followed him his entire life. He wanted to know where he really came from. To find answers, he and his family met with the Duke. The Duke revealed that Xian was descended from the ancient Legra clan, a legendary bloodline known for their red hair, red eyes, and mastery of sorcery. 1,000 years ago, the clan played a major role in the war against the demons and used their power to seal them away. Before their defeat, the demons unleashed a final curse that nearly wiped out the entire clan. For centuries, everyone believed the Legra bloodline had vanished. Then, 12 years earlier, a mysterious woman appeared before the queen carrying a baby. That baby was Xian. The woman told the queen that the child would one day become a light capable of saving the world. Trusting her words, the queen accepted the child but arranged for trusted friends to raise him in secret. Those friends became Xian's parents. The Duke explained that his parents had been granted honorary noble status by the queen and given a remote village to oversee. This kept Xian away from ambitious nobles who might have tried to exploit his abilities. To everyone's surprise, Xian admitted that he already knew he was adopted. He'd overheard the truth years ago. Even so, nothing had changed in his heart. He felt the people who raised him were his real parents. The Duke also noted that his heritage couldn't explain all of his unusual knowledge. Xian simply replied that many things seemed to exist naturally in his memories. Although the explanation sounded suspicious, nobody pushed the issue further. Before they left, the Duke informed him that a royal invitation from the Queen would likely arrive soon. Not long afterward, Xian spent some time talking with Marie. She revealed that although she'd been unable to move or speak during her illness, she could still hear the voices around her. The voices of Xian and their parents had helped her stay sane throughout the 2 years she'd spent trapped inside her own body. Eventually, the family returned home after their long stay in the city. With peace restored, Xian began focusing on training once again. As he studied everything he'd learned about magical energy, he developed a theory. He believed Marie's unusual physical abilities had come from unconsciously absorbing magical energy before she fell ill. This led him to a new discovery. By channeling magical energy through his body, he dramatically increased his physical abilities. The technique allowed him to leap high into the air and move with superhuman strength. He named the technique Boost. Remembering the barrier Ainswheel used during their battle, Xian also learned how to create magical shields. By combining Boost with defensive magic, he increased the force of his attacks and punched a massive hole through a tree. His training continued until a royal letter finally arrived. The Queen had summoned him to the capital. Knowing this would be the beginning of a new chapter in his life, Xian said goodbye to his friends and family. Before he left, Marie gave him a necklace to remember them by. Rafina was assigned to accompany him on the journey. As the royal escort prepared to depart, Xian took one final look at the people who'd supported him through everything. Xian and Marie then floated an orb of light each into the air, signifying their reunion one day. This was the end. Watch the next video on screen and subscribe to not miss more recaps.